Hello and welcome to warrenthornton.com. Hello and welcome to warrenthornton.com. Boy, have we got a show for you tonight. This may enable you to spend your entire weekend trying to look at the various things we've got tonight. It is going to be a long show, I'm afraid. But then again, we have so much to get through. It almost seems as though there is a myriad of crazy things happening every day. And of course, we do try to get through as many of them as we possibly can. Now, we need to talk tonight. The very first thing we're going to talk about is children. And of course, it is a very emotive and very, shall we say, disturbing subject about what happens to a lot of the children. And we're going to talk about a charity that ran a brothel for children, literally, and it involves Vladimir Zelensky and his wife, Alina. And of course, they are not directly involved with it, but they've certainly been a part of it, and somebody that Zelensky decorated is very much in the firing line because he was the one who was sorting it all out. And we're going to play you some videos. We have it 100%. We have checked our sources on this. You know that we've been involved in a lot of hunting these videos down and trying to get these people taken, shall we say, to the cleaners because of what they've done and what they've been doing with these children. So let's get straight into the bits and pieces of what is going on with this. So sit down, strap in, and here we go. So the Zelensky or the Zelensky project is basically about evacuated Ukrainian orphans that we use for PR and fundraising in Turkey. Now, what is the problem with that? Well, we're going to get into that, but the very first thing we need to do is to have a little look, I would say, at everything. You see, we've got these people here, as I say, and they're being interviewed and they're being looked at for corruption. Now, one of the main problems that we have, of course, is everybody turned around and said, it's going to be Russia. Russia, Russia, Russia. They're all messing about with children. They've taken all these children. They're never going back home again. It's absolutely terrible. It's absolutely awful. We can't have this anymore. Okay. And of course, von der Leyen and many others have turned around and said that's the case as well. Now, let's get into it. We've got some videos for you to play. Rumble is not on at the moment. That's a bit of a shame. Let's have a little look. See if we have the live up and running. We may not have. Let's just click on that. Thank you very much for telling me. I may have missed putting the live on. So very simply, as I say, we will have that up and ready to go in a second if you are missing on the live. And we'll just let people give a second for people to join. Thank you very much for letting me know. I missed the live. I do apologize, everybody. If you're just joining, we are about to get into the situation of Zelensky, or should we say, Ukraine and orphans. Many, many orphans. Loads of people are always talking about how bad the Russians are and how terrible and what they've done with the kids and everything else. They've done this, they've done that. They've not helped the kids, should we say, go back to their parents. Let's get into, let's have a video, first of all. Rather than me waffling on, let's play three videos for you so you know that I'm not making this up. This is a Ukrainian orphan child who was sent across to Turkey, one of 510 children where this happened.
Є насправді деякі наслідки тих правопорушень, які відбувалися під час евакуації, які дуже важко приховати. Зокрема, декілька дівчат повернулися з цієї евакуації вагітними від турків, які працювали в готелях. Чи відомо вам про це?
Давайте так. Як я можу це прокоментувати? Відповідальність, ми знаємо купу історій, які були в готелі. Відповідальність за цю історію несе не фонд, а несе люди, які відповідали за дітей. Просто тупо зняв 3 готеля величезних в Туреччині. Ми наняли повністю турецький персонал. Ми повністю контролювали весь готель. Нам турки нічим не допомагали. Турки віддали нам ключі, сказали, це ваше.
Насправді, ми спілкувалися з багатьма людьми, які були залучені до цього процесу, і нам вихователі, які працювали там, казали, що вони скаржилися співробітникам фонду про те, що турки, які працюють в готелі, чіпляються до дівчат. І вони кажуть, що ніякої реакції на це не було.
Ніхто з бізнесменів так близько дітей цих не бачив, як бачив я.
А скажи мені, ти з цими дітьми спілкувався?
Да, 100%. Я дуже часто був на локаціях.
Okay, so looking after these children, he was there quite often. Let's get into the full story. If you're just joining us, we're looking at the 510 children that were rented out. So the Ukraine media did an investigation along with other people, and we've had a look at it too. And of course, we've worked with our people, and they've said that they've confirmed that this actually went on with children of the state. Now, there are reports on a large-scale scandal surrounding the program to evacuate orphan children from Dnipropetrovsk region to Turkey. Now, the program was initiated in 2022 under the personal supervision of Ukraine's First Lady, Alina Zelenska, or Zelensky's wife. Now, as part of a childhood without war project implemented by businessman Ruslan Shostak. Now, you're going to hear more about him, and that is his charitable foundation. 510 children were taken to Turkey, where they lived in hotels in Antalya and Beldibi for almost 2 years. The investigation revealed shocking details of systematic violation of children's rights, including exploitation, abuse, criminal negligence by those responsible, and sexual exploitation. The evacuation operation, which Shostak called the largest evacuation of children since World War II, we thought it was the Russians, but who knew, involved the rental of 9 planes, 90 buses, and 24 rail cars, and was initially presented as a humanitarian mission. However, in practice, after initially acceptable conditions, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Children reported discriminatory access to food compared to staff, worsening material provisions, and most cynically, the systematic involvement in fundraising activities and the loaning out of minors for money by the staff who were running the charity. Now, specifically, not so much the hotel staff, but people that were running the charity allowed them access to minors. Minors were forced to participate in photo and video shoots to solicit donations for the foundation's needs. Those who refused were punished, their phones and tablets confiscated, and they were deprived of adequate food and water. Ukrainian representatives documented that the children lacked proper access to education. An educational classroom for 25 pupils was set up in the hotel, but around 200 children needed schooling. Most children studied in hotel rooms where proper conditions were absent, unlike the people who decided that they could rent some of the girls out. In most rooms where children studied, there was no internet. This is from the Ukrainian state report, by the way. Children who do not have tablets had no access to educational study, with other children using one shared tablet. At the same time, the tablet was used as an incentive tool by the accompanying staff. For bad behavior or unwillingness to participate in the foundation's fundraising campaigns or to be friendly to hotel staff and their friends, children were deprived of their tablet, consequently locked in their rooms. The scandal was further exacerbated by the facts of sexual abuse and a complete lack of security for the children. Indeed, security for the children was run by the very people who were abusing them. Children testified about mass harassment by hotel staff, to which accompanying adults did not respond, including the gentleman you have just seen. And this was known about by everyone. The culmination was 2 pregnancies among the minors. 15-year-old Nastasia became pregnant by a 23-year-old named Mammy, and a 16-year-old Ileana was impregnated by a 21-year-old cook. The girls described in detail how staff freely entered their rooms, even paid for them to be naked and to take pictures. And their caregivers not only knew about these relationships, but in Ilona's case, they even facilitated the meeting. After the pregnancies were discovered, the girls and several of the other children who were abused were urgently returned to Ukraine and registered as students in a vocational school in an attempt by Zelensky's wife to cover up the incident. Natasha first saw a doctor only in her 7th month, already back in Ukraine. Both gave birth without any significant support from the state or the foundation, and one of the girls later tried to commit suicide. A monitoring visit by a delegation in March 2024, which included the Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights, representatives of the Dnipropetrovsk Regional Military Administration, as well as the Turkish Ombudsman and UNICEF, documented egregious and terrible sexual violations. The report noted that Shostak's foundation had long restricted access for Turkish services and international organizations to the children, insisting on its own self-sufficiency. So in other words, it tried to operate outside of those rules. Now, the foundation's representative and the children accompanying persons stopped providing necessary information, restricted access of psychologists and social workers to the minors, almost completely stopped them from taking medical checkups, and largely restricted any medical aid to children found with bruises. The foundation insisted it did not require additional support, as it regularly conducted fundraising campaigns, keeping the funds in its own accounts, hence the corruption. Now, the report also states the use of physical violence and psychological pressure by accompanying persons from among the caregivers, as well as representatives of the Shostak Foundation, was systematic. The figure of senior caregiver Alexander Titov was singled out. He delegated the functions of supervision, control, punishment, intimidation, and renting out of minors or child athletes under his command. The caregiver personally beat, intimidated and abused children. These are testimonies from the children and the video evidence confirming his violent actions. After the inspection, he was merely demoted to a PE teacher with no criminal charges brought whatsoever. The report also mentioned the caregivers abused children with disabilities, beating them with phone chargers and wet towels. The foundation shifted responsibility for security to the Turkish side, claiming it had no right to interfere with the caregiver's work and was only responsible for material provisions. However, the report said that the foundation's representative in recent months who had actively petitioned for allowing outsiders into the hotel territory to show Ukrainian children and also to get them to participate in fundraising campaigns without clear criteria for selecting any visitors and creating massive risk. Now, the legal consequences were completely negligible. A criminal case regarding the failure to ensure the children's safety after the monitoring was closed a year later due to lack of evidence. Meanwhile, the foundation's founder, Ruslan Shostak, was awarded a state honor, the Order of Merit, 3rd class, signed by President Vladimir Zelensky. During the preparations to the investigation, Shostak's team wrote a plan to neutralize the journalist's material. It included working with a database of social media accounts, a controlled post by an influencer about the non-accidental timing of the investigation's release, and non-public communications with editors of top media outlets, and also getting Azov and NAFO to give them a hand to dismiss the stories as bunkum and Russian propaganda. An employee of Ukrainian businessman Ruslan Shostak's charitable foundation accidentally sent the journalist a document listing actions resembling a campaign to neutralize the impact of the upcoming investigation. And thus we were able to find out about it. Now, the reaction from the Turkish side, which was voiced in December 2025, indicates that responsibility was also blurred at the international level. Ankara stated that it had offered a place to children in state institutions of the Ministry of Family and Social Services, but the Ukrainians rejected this proposal, insisting on accommodation in hotels chosen by Shostak's foundation. Turkish authorities emphasized the place was coordinated with Ukrainian bodies and daily care remained the full and complete responsibility of the Ukrainian accompanying persons. Thus, the investigation exposes not just individual failures, but a system of corrupt irresponsibility and the cynical use of humanitarian projects for PR, political and sexual gain. An initiative publicly supervised by First Lady Olena Zelensky and receiving support at the highest state level resulted in exploitation and trauma for the children. The subsequent lack of a real investigation and the awarding of an order signed by President Volodymyr Zelensky to the organizer and the systematic blocking of proper aid agencies' access to the children point to a conscious effort by the ruling circle to cover up the scandal and accountability. Now, businessman Shostak's foundation operated in an atmosphere of impunity created from the top, where a formal rescue operation served as a cover for the actual neglects of the minors' safety. That's correct. They were rescuing these children, but they were actually exposing them. The decision to the foundation to reject Turkish proposals for placement in official state institutions, opting instead for private hotel, underscores where its true priorities lay, controlling information and money, not the children's well-being. The story demonstrates how, during a crisis, the corruption schemes, PR interests of the president's inner circle were placed above the elementary protection of the life and dignity of its most vulnerable citizens. Now, before we go to Nilis, I'm going to play you two more videos. These are from the girls. Have a look.
Є насправді деякі наслідки.
Let's get into this one here.
Пару цитат важливих зачитати і, можливо, ви прокоментуєте, чи так воно було. Зі слів українського консула, упродовж останніх 2 місяців суттєво зросла кількість запитів з боку представників фонду щодо допуску на територію готелю сторонніх осіб. Фонд пояснював це потребою показувати дітей з України для проведення кампаній зборів коштів на їх підтримку на рахунки фонду, а також спілкування дітей із людьми поза межами закладу. Персонал фонду щоденно контактує з дітьми та має цілодобовий безперешкодний доступ до місць їх навчання і проживання, що уможливлює в тому числі ймовірні сексуальні злочини відносно дітей та застосування до них насилля. Цитата. Чи маєте як прокоментувати?
Ні, немає. З першого дня в проєкті введена пропускна система. Готелі не працювали як готелі. Готелі працювали як табори.
Baktım 4 hoca geldi. O zaman pek ben yani fazla Rusça bilmiyordum. Çeviriyle anlaşıyorduk. Sonra işte 4 hoca geldi, beni çağırdılar. Benimle konuşmaya çalışıyorlar ama Rusça ben bilmiyorum. Abimi çağırdım, abim Rusça biliyordu. İşte geldiler konuştular, sen neden odasına geldin? Neden yanına geliyorsun?
And we've got one more to show you, and then we'll go to Nilis in a second. It is quite staggering.
Помогают волонтеры и тому подобное. А за рамки этого, то есть оно не выйдет только для тех, кто там участвует. Волонтеры, там еще кто-то.
А что именно не выйдет за рамки?
Ну, то есть, допустим, там нигде это показывать не будут, только тем, кто участвует в проекте, и все.
Угу. Это действительно было так?
Ну, нас выложили в Инстаграм, в ТикТок, поэтому, думаю, нет.
А как вы узнали, что вас вылаживают в Инстаграм и ТикТок?
Там был страничка, получается, вот этого проекта, и нас туда вылаживали. В ТикТок просто в рекомендациях попадалось. Мы не хотели, ну, допустим, если мы говорим, мы не хотим, заберут телефоны, заберут планшеты. Мы не хотим, чтобы нас снимали, заберут телефоны, заберут планшеты.
Тепер ми маємо змогу навчатися, співати, танцювати, займатися.
Сказали, что мы находимся в проекте, и благодаря ему мы появились, нас привезли в Турцию.
Now, very, very simply, let's be absolutely clear here. almost everybody in Europe, certainly charities, certainly the European Union and everybody else would have known this was going on because they were trying to gain, including UNICEF and UNESCO, were trying to gain access to these children and complained to the European Union. Ukraine knew full well this was going on. Zelensky actually gave this guy the Order of Merit, 3rd class, and the wife of Zelensky knew full well that this was happening in Turkey. So all these people knew, and yet all we hear from Ursula von der Leyen and many others is that Russia did this with 300, it turned out 300 children, they kidnapped them and everything else. They sent these children to Turkey, exploited them, 2 of them got pregnant, and they dragged them back home to Ukraine, and they covered it all up. Nillis.
Well, they were lucky to be sent back home and not eliminated, really.
They were.
I remember this has been going on for years in Turkey. I remember during the Yeltsin time, young Russians and people from the former Soviet Union were offered jobs in Turkey, things like beauticians, help with children, and the tourist trade, and they were entrapped in prostitution. So much so that another name for prostitute in Turkey is actually Natasha. The Natashas, they're called. And another harrowing thing is with children was, I know during the siege of Aleppo, there was a exchange of women and children from the people who were loyal to Assad, they were supposed to go to Damascus, where the other people were allowed to go to Idlib, the women and children. But as the people who were loyal to Assad, when they left Aleppo, they were stopped by the white helmets and other people. They were shown bags of sweets and crisps, and their children were really hungry. They hadn't eaten properly for months. And the children were enticed outside, were told to go outside the bus. They were put onto other transport and they were taken to Turkey. This is in the time of, the Syrian civil war in Aleppo. So This has been going on. Nobody knows the fate of those children, but it wouldn't surprise me if their fate was something like this or even worse. And so this has been going on in Turkey for years, I think.
Yeah, it absolutely has. And we thought we'd bring that to you because it does seem incredibly rich that people are talking about all sorts of things that are going on with these children. And yet nobody has spoken about this or spoken up about this in the West at all. And yet it was known by everybody that this was going on, and definitely Zelensky and, of course, his inner circle. One of those who knew that it was going on, of course, is one of the ones, Anna Sokharod, who is the deputy of the Rada, very, very close to Zelensky and his wife. She is now being investigated by NABU. And of course, this is shall we say, the project that is run where the West keeps an eye on its money and doesn't want Ukraine doing it. And of course, if Ukraine don't sign the deal, they're going to stick 70 or 80 of these Ukrainian MPs in jail who are corrupt. And of course, we've got to talk about all the children as well. As Andrew has just pointed out there, you have to talk about all the children that have been sent to all these other countries. You have we are talking about in Donetsk alone, just Donetsk, 9,000 children that have been sent to Germany, to Poland and everywhere else, and have suffered systematic abuse along the same lines and have not been returned to Ukraine. And in fact, we still have all these children that we cannot account for. And of those 330 odd children that they wanted to come back, from Russia, it turned out 157 of them were already in Ukraine, had been sent abroad. And everybody is keeping quiet about this. Why is no one talking about this? Mark Onza.
Warren, there's a questionable story about a member of our royal family who possibly took a couple of children away on a helicopter after going to a nightclub. Have you heard it? Is there any truth in it as far as you know?
No, I've heard the rumor, but there's been no, certainly nobody's come up with any evidence of it. Lee Williams.
I was going to say exactly what Mark just said. It was something to do with, let's call him the Prince Andrew. It was to do with a helicopter.
Well,
And
Andrews,
he was, yeah.
to be fair, I mean, we haven't got any proof, so it's
Okay.
hearsay until somebody gets any proof. But there's no
Yeah,
doubt
sure.
that Prince Andrew needs to go to America and he needs to answer questions in a courtroom, because, of course, his involvement. You don't give 12 million, or you don't give a huge settlement to somebody who you don't know. It's as simple as that. It's like Jeffrey Archer, isn't it, when he was dropping off envelopes on the tops of phone boxes with money in to people that he never knew. Sean Murphy.
Well, Warren, the reason they're keeping quiet about it is because the governments of the EU and the UK and the USA are full of paedophiles and nonsense,
Could
and
well be.
they want it hidden because they were the ones that were benefiting from the corruption, from the dealing, from the money being made for trafficking these children.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, there's a big show of this. As you know, from the EU and everybody else, everybody's turning around and going, "Oh, it's terrible you're doing this with the children." They're even turning around and saying North Korean children are being used by the Russians. Tell you what, my dear, how about you get your own house in order? They're making up all sorts of crazy stories that have come out of Ukraine about children from North Korea being abused by Russians. Tell you what, my love, how about you tell us everything that you know? And you are one of the people who's being investigated. Somebody else had their hand up there for a second. Who was that? Nillis.
Yeah, it was me. Well, it makes you wonder how widespread these things are. And
yes.
This seems to be quite a simple case of like ordinary people using these children. But have we got other Zelensky islands, other Zelensky hotels? I presume they're dotted all around the world.
Well, we can assume all we like, but it has to be said that many, many of these children have gone missing from Ukraine, many, many more than the West have accused Russia of taking. Many more, well over 100 times more children have disappeared in the West and cannot be found. Nillis.
Yeah, I know at one time, just an ordinary citizen, he was talking about 400,000 children being missing from Ukraine. I know that 9,000, you said that there are documented 9,000 missing from the Donbass. And it's one of the most disturbing things I found was there were two things. One during the Auschwitz commemoration, when Zelensky appeared, all the elites there applauded him, and the same thing happened at the Pope's funeral, and you wonder why all these world elites are applauding Zelensky.
Because they're all backing him. Getting a little off here. Sean Murphy.
Yeah.
Well, Warren, when we're talking about these children, one can only assume that some of them are being sold into slavery. Veiled by, "Oh, we adopted him or her. We adopted a couple of Ukrainian children," but in fact they're being sold into slavery. And the thing is, another reason is why they want them out of Ukraine is because they don't want to spend any money on the care of these orphaned children or displaced children, and
okay, so let's
they
go
want
there,
to
then.
make as much money out of them as they possibly can for their corruption and perhaps their war effort, but more likely corruption.
Okay, so let's go there then, because Nillis has made an allegation. Sean's made an allegation. and Lee's made certain allegations about the royal family and stuff like that. So let's go there then, because there is no doubt whatsoever that there is this, shall we say, sexual push onto the children that are around to get them to be, I don't know what you would say, more open, more available. What I'm not quite sure what you would say. There are two countries at the moment that are being punished for not pushing LGBTQ rights, but it seems when von der Leyen seems to be in the grip of one, she doesn't seem too comfortable about it. And of course, the EU are actually punishing them. Kazakhstan is one of them, and of course, Serbia is another one that they are punishing for not carrying through LGBT doctrine that they've literally been given. Now, is there a link to this? Well, there could well be. We all know that Ukraine is awash, shall we say. We've got Rustam Umarov's daughter, who works as an OnlyFans model. We've got, of course, you've seen the girl in the "I'm a Ukrainian, this is my car, I'm a Ukrainian, this is my village." We showed you the video, who works as an OnlyFans. Well, I would say OnlyFans is pretty much prostitution without, shall we say, without actually having to do any actual prostitution. But we've also got, this is the public prosecutor in Ukraine. Unbelievable. And she's got an OnlyFans page. So it seems as though in Ukraine, this sort of corruption, I mean, it's not just corruption to do with money. There seems to be an awful lot of moral corruption that's going around with it as well, which seems very, very odd. But then again, maybe it doesn't. Because when you consider what everybody else is talking about here, Nilis?
Well, yeah, it does seem moral corruption, because I thought if you were the public prosecutor in Ukraine, you'd be making backhanders hand over fist. But yeah, if you want to demoralize yourself, I thought, yeah, better go on OnlyFans and meet people there.
Yes, absolutely. Hand over fist. I wish you wouldn't use those terms, Nilis. Very, very simply, let's get into some of this, and because this is happening sort of worldwide, we're getting more and more stories of this coming up, and we're getting more and more people getting very, very uncomfortable with some of the truth that is coming out. We've had the case, haven't we, in Great Britain, where we've had all sorts of things here. We've got the son of a prominent man in Victoria who's been found guilty of rape, but hides his identity under a suppression order. Now, the son of a high-profile Melbourne couple has been found guilty of a rape in a bombshell verdict at the county court. He sexually assaulted a woman in his own home. Then he used a fake Uber receipt to cover his tracks. And for legal reasons, the media cannot identify him or his famous family. And we are working diligently to find out who that is, because trust me, if we find out who it is, we'll be naming him, and in very, very quick time indeed. So if anybody does have any further information on that, let me know. But this just goes to show how much this is going on. And here's a post about it. It's not like it's being hidden or anything else. There we are. The son of a high-profile Victorian man was found guilty of rape. There's sobs and tears in the court today. What a world we live in. But they cannot name the guy. This seems to me, if you are guilty of this sort of crime, I think, or I would expect, I don't know about you, but I would expect people literally to be able to name him. I certainly would want to know who it is, but we will find out. And when we do find out, we'll let you know, and we'll let you know straight away, because as far as we're concerned, we don't have it. We don't believe in gag orders here. Sean Murphy.
Well, it just goes to show how corrupt the judicial system is. Although, okay, this guy was convicted, the judge was paid off. Somebody was paid off to not release any details.
Right. First of all, we can't say he was paid off, but there's something wrong here if he's issued a gag order, isn't there?
Well, that's right. Why would he issue it? Because it's either a personal friend or, you know.
I think you may well be right, but I can't turn around and say that
No, we
because
can't say for sure, but
that opens us up to all sorts of naughties.
it suggests that, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Yes, certainly does. It certainly suggests that judges are looking after people left, right, and centre. While we're talking about judges looking after people left, right, and centre, let's get into a couple of things that we need to talk about when it comes to the UK. Now, we have heard, haven't we, lots of people having a go at Farage for something he may have said that was a bit naughty about 50 years ago to a 12-year-old. Lots of Labour MPs coming out and saying, oh, how terrible it is and how awful and this shouldn't be happening and what sort of society do we live in. These are the very people who voted against a grooming gangs inquiry. Okay, they voted against the most vulnerable of our children of literally not having an investigation into what was happening. Thankfully, there were some that actually are fighting the good fight for our children. And one of them is a place called Open Justice UK. So here we go. We're working to make the system transparent and accountable. We obtain evidence, hidden evidence, and expose failures to driven reform. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pop the link. It's called openjusticeuk.org. We're going to give them a shout out because they do good sterling work, and they do sterling work in terms of making sure. Let's pop this into the comments. So in the comments is where you can find them. There's the link in the comments. And of course, we're now going to have a little chat about what they have been up to. So what they've done is they have literally gone into and got the transcripts from all the trials in the Rotherham cases to start with. There are 8 or 9 pages. Now, as you can see, this is it. And of course, there are 12 pages of some really horrific testimony that has gone on here. We've got the judge, the Honour Judge Sarah Wright. This is a Rotherham case from 2016. Yes, they knew this was going on in 2016. Okay, here's the perpetrators. 2 white women in there, Karen McGregor and Shelley Davis, helping these gentlemen to perform all sorts of absolutely disgusting things that went on with that. And of course, when people turn around and go, it can't be true, can it? It is true. It's absolutely terrible. Now, there are another 7 or 8 cases of that, by the way, if you want to go and have a look. So there it is, the Open Justice for the UK. And then if you go and click on transcripts, it will give you full transcripts and sentencing remarks. Okay, and it will do all the grooming gangs for you. It'll do Bradford. It's got Rotherham. It's got all sorts on there. All you have to do is just go onto that website, click onto it, and you can see all the inquiries, all the things that were covered up, and everything else. They really do a good job, and I would highly recommend that you do go and have a look at that. So when it comes to protecting our children, it seems as though they don't want to do that, which is quite disgraceful and, of course, quite troubling and quite worrying. And for me, I think it's a case of we have to start doing that more and more and more. I mean, you need to be asking these people to have an effective national inquiry into the grooming gangs. We need to have a chair with no ties to any organisations. We need to investigate institutions linked to the complicity with grooming, police forces, care homes, local authorities, and not have its remit expanded into types of abuse beyond groups based on sexual offences and grooming, which is exactly what they want to do. So I just thought I'd put that out there so you know exactly what's going on. And while we're on the subject of the UK, shall we talk about tax havens while we're on the subject of the UK? Very simply, what's been going on. We are the world's biggest enablers, given that Rachel Reeves is going to tax every British person out of existence. Shall we have a little look and see who the world's biggest enablers for corporate tax abuse are? There we go. The British Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Bermuda, Singapore, Hong Kong, the Netherlands, Jersey, Ireland, Luxembourg, Bahamas, the Isle of Man, Guernsey, Cyprus, the United Arab Emirates, Mauritius, Malta, China, United Kingdom, and France, just to give you an idea. Now, this is where we rank. Loss utilization, we're 48.8. Capital gains taxation avoidance, 86.8. Patent box regimes, fictional interest, all these. Go and have a look on this corporate tax haven index, and you will see that Britain last year allowed or helped 27,152 companies evade corporation tax. Go and have a look for yourself. Quite easy. It's called Corporate Tax Haven Index or taxjustice.net. They are very good as well at looking after, or shall we say, making sure that you can see exactly who's doing what. And this includes, you know, lots of your high-end elites looking after each other and where the bank accounts actually are. So if ever you want to find out which CEO is 165 years of age and has an account in the Cayman Islands, that's the place to go. Just giving away a few trade secrets there. We're going to get into some bits and pieces to do with this as well, because we need to talk about NGOs and Starmer. Have a look at this.
Speaking of the United Kingdom, we have a wild news story at Dropsite News today. That is an adapted excerpt of a new book called The Fraud by Paul Holden, and it uses expanded reporting and documents that are also not included in the book, because the book is basically an investigation into the political operation of Sir Keir Starmer, current UK Prime Minister. The piece that he's writing for us today looks at a secretly funded operation that Starmer and his current chief of staff, Morgan McSweeney, were running, that has some implications for work that Emily has done in the past. So what they did is, when Jeremy Corbyn was rising and was the head of the Labour Party, they came together and said, how are we going to undercut the support for Corbynism and elevate Starmer? And so they identified a lot of progressive media that had grown up around the kind of Corbynist rise and said, we need to undercut these folks. And so they created two organizations, and this is what he's able to report with these documents, and this is what hasn't been known before. They created an organization called Stop Funding Fake News.
Oh, right.
SFN, and another one called the Center for Countering Digital Hate. And so they presented themselves as they're just grassroots Britons who are concerned about fake news and misinformation and disinformation out there. Not that they were funded by secret money from pro-Israel elements that were funneling it into the Keir Starmer political machine. That's what he can report. So this whole thing, this whole fake news scheme that they were running was not grassroots, just concerned Britons. It was the Keir Starmer machine aimed at destroying Jeremy Corbyn. So they went after a bunch of left-wing publications. They also went after, for balance and for fun, a bunch of populist right-wing news outlets as well, including Breitbart and The Federalist. And they went after them quite hard. Turns out Emily is quite familiar with CCDH, Center for Countering Digital Hate. So tell us what your experience was with this, what we now know is a Keir Starmer machine operation, but at the time was said to be just people concerned about, fake news.
Yeah, well, I think this actually is a really important story, because it wasn't just like MAGA news organizations. Zero Hedge was also targeted at the same time as a lot of other conservatives. Now we know Breitbart, but back in 2020, Ben Collins, who I think was like the disinformation or misinformation reporter at NBC News. So this is a journalist. Basically, I'm going to read this little section from a story he published at NBC News at the time. Tattletailed to Google about a CCDH report on the Federalist comment section. So this is a quote from his NBC News story. Google blocked the Federalist from its advertising platform after the NBC News verification unit brought the project to its attention. Incredible, first of all, that you have a journalist tattletaling on another news outlet's, because they don't like this news outlet, on another news outlet's comment section to who? To Google, which owns YouTube. Yep. So if you're familiar with the YouTube comment section, that's a hilarious move on Ben Collins' on Ben Collins' part. It was always so maddening that a journalist would take the CCDH report and then tattletale to a big tech company. I mean, just infuriating. And at the time, I mean, I remember the entire mainstream media cheerleading this report from Ben Collins. Be like, yeah, get him, get him. Well, if you tattletale to Google and they shut down your advertising platform, you are out of business in 2020. There has since been sort of parallel efforts to back up.
What was the effect that it had on the Federalist?
So Jim Jordan came in and a couple of Republican congressmen came in and pushed back on it, and it went away. It would have totally shut down the website.
It destroyed the Canary, which is the Canary is now making a comeback, but the Canary is a left-wing outlet in the UK. It took the Canary from a influential news outlet of 25 to 30 journalists to one person.
Right.
And they took credit for just destroying it that way. But sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, and I mean, that's why you've talked about this recently. The speech protections in the United States make, especially if you're a journalist, can make you very patriotic when you look at what happens in the UK, because it was brought to Google's attention that they had a clear legal problem on their hands, and also that this type of activity was going to animate Republicans on the antitrust front, which it absolutely did. Now, I would argue Google has played Trump a little bit like a fiddle over the last 6 months plus, or I guess almost a year now since he won the election, and big tech has been getting all kinds of goodies from Donald Trump. But at the time, Google was freaked out because all of a sudden you had these Republicans talking about repealing Section 230 and antitrust law and all of that. And so they backed down pretty quickly. But it was still, I think really telling that a journalist was laundering a report from what we now know to be a foreign government's operation.
Or hoping to be a foreign government, foreign political party.
So, yeah.
So how does it feel to know that it was a Keir Starmer machine operation that was masquerading as this kind of good media watchdog?
It's not surprising at all, because we saw it from, Taibbi did a lot of reporting back in the day with the Global Engagement Center, and Gabe Kaminsky did a lot of this too. That was propped up by the American State Department that was putting media companies on blacklists, including the Federalist, including, I think, Unheard, where I'm a columnist, got on one at one point, not a conservative media outlet at all. Places like Zero Hedge, like heterodox outlets that question the establishment. They were all being targeted by actually also groups that were propped up by the U.S. State Department, where they were getting most of their funding from state and from other U.S. governmental or non-governmental organizations that are mostly given, where their budget mostly comes from the government.
So there we go. Just to clear that up for you, let's do this in a more, shall we say, roundabout and straightforward way. The neoliberal Starmerite wing of the UK's Labour Party basically been operating a secret and highly successful collection of private pocket NGOs designed to muzzle the media on both sides of the Atlantic. Now, there's an investigative book out there by an investigative journalist called Paul Holden, who's made a book called The Fraud. And of course, it details Starmer's chief of staff, Morgan McSweeney, his work to create organisations posing as grassroots anti-misinformation services, which of course were completely wrong, were actually founded to undermine media critical of the Labour right and funded by shady pro-Israel donors. Created in 2018, the CCDH, or the Centre for Countering Digital Hate, is a British-American non-profit with offices in Washington and London, with the self-declared aim of countering online hate speech and disinformation and misinformation. But along with its sister campaign, Stop Funding Fake News, the CCDH has actually served as a proxy for Starmer, working to silence opposition by campaigning to have advertisers pull funding and pushing big tech to delete offending figures and outlets' accounts. Who was targeted? Broad array of media, both to the left and right of Starmer, both in the UK and the US. And of course, Jeremy Corbyn, the Jeremy Corbyn aligned the canary. Corbyn, of course, was later ousted as Labour's leader on a nonsensical anti-Semite charge to conservative outlets like Breitbart, climate change denialists and COVID vaccine skeptics also were attacked by the CCDH. Now, Stop Funding Fake News funder, Labour Together, an anti-Corbyn think tank, which became the incubator of Starmer's 2024 neoliberal change manifesto, took hundreds of thousands of pounds in undeclared political donations from unknown donors. Later, we found out was Soros and Israel. Sean Murphy.
Well, we all know that Nick Griffin has fallen foul to them. The CCDH, I think,
yes.
Is it CCDH?
Yes, yeah.
Nick Griffin has fallen foul of them, so they're trying to shut him up.
Yeah, it is being helped by the CCDH, but it's the CAA, the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism.
Yeah,
but definitely they're receiving some funding along those lines.
Yeah, they're definitely involved in it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and of course, hopefully now that gives everybody a good look at where we're going with this sort of thing. Now, when we talk about NGOs, sorry, we're on to this man yet again. Marco Rubio, once again, has been talking about NGOs. You've never heard anything so done. We're going to tell you exactly what's going on, what we've heard from him.
Why are we hiring American and international NGOs to go into other countries and run healthcare systems that are parallel and sometimes in conflict with the healthcare systems of the host country? If we're trying to help countries, help the country. Don't help the NGO to go in and find a new line of business. And so that's what the model that we're breaking. We're not doing this anymore. We are not going to spend billions of dollars funding the NGO industrial complex while close and important partners like Kenya are either have no role to play or have very little influence over how healthcare money is being spent. Bottom line is, if you want to help a country, work with that country, not work with a third party that imposes things on that country.
What you mean, like the WHO? Very, very simply, Marco Rubio, little Damien, as I do call him. You're quite right, Vic. This guy, of course, you know full well from me talking about him quite often, is one of the most dangerous people out there. And of course, he is working actively against Trump and against Witkoff. He has been for many, ever since he's been there. And of course, he's continuing to do this, and many people, of course, will turn around and go, well, not so sure. Just go and check him out. He's always been this sort of terrible neocon, and he is the person who is responsible for scuppering the peace deal. No question whatsoever. And in fact, we're going to sit back now and we're going to talk, or we're going to let the whole peace deal thing and everything that is going on, because he is the one who is driving on behalf of the neocons, or the neoliberals, as people call them. He is the one who is absolutely driving this nonsense that is going on in terms of the peace deal that's not going to be, that's never going to be. And of course, everybody is turning around and going, well, it must be okay. There's about a 15-20 minute video that we're going to have a look at. And it is the on the Russia-US bilateral negotiations, and it is of course the Alexanders, Mercurios and Christoforou having a discussion on this very thing, and a lot of what they've got to say here is very, very relevant, so it's well worth you having a look at this, and of course do enjoy it and sit back with a cup of coffee. It's about 15-20 minutes.
Let's talk about the diplomacy that took place the other day in Moscow between the United States and Russia. Witkoff, Kushner with Putin, Ushakov, and Dmitriev. What were your thoughts on the meeting? 5 hours long.
Well, 5 hours long. It was a very long meeting, and indeed one wonders what they talk about for 5 hours, because I can't believe it's just about Ukraine, because it's quite clear that on the Ukraine issue there was no real movement. The Americans came with what I suspect was their original 28 points, which has now been reduced to 27. At least that's what the Russians are telling us. That's what Ushakov said to us. The Russians said what they've been saying for, well, several weeks now. Ushakov has said it, Peskov has said it, Putin himself has said it. These are interesting ideas, but they're discussion points. They're not a plan. We're prepared to sit down with the Americans and we're prepared to talk about this. Apparently, Kushner and Witkoff brought 4 other documents with them. 4. So 5 documents altogether. I suspect the original one, the original 28, 27 points. The other 4, who knows what they are? 19 points, 22 points, European ideas, all kinds of other things. According to Ushakov, they didn't discuss the wording of any of these documents.
Do not trust one single herb. If you use
Putin said in general terms, we are happy to discuss this, set up.
Let's just give you a heads up here. Those 5 documents, we now know, or we knew a couple of days ago, what was contained in those. They have now split the peace deal into 5 different segments. So now we're talking about ceasefires as one separate document. We're talking about land being given as another separate document, the amount of army that are allowed, what's going to happen with NATO. They're now all separate documents, have been split into 5 different sections.